Hello, this is Pigsy, doing another video. There's a few things I want to touch upon today. Planet X Nibiru, that's something important. We're getting increased fireballs coming into the atmosphere. There's other signs like sort of reddish sunsets and dawns, even just too much light at night. Basically it's 10 o'clock at night and you look out the window and it's still quite bright out there. I was saying some meteorite or something blew up that over Siberia that sort of brightened the place up. Earthquakes have increased, so that's increased by over 100%. There was like 4,000 in something like year 2000, and now there's sort of like 100,000 or something, X amount. So, so that's increased. There's also, what people don't know is there's at least a good 1,000 or so volcanoes under the sea, which are likely to react when we have any sort of a major earthquakes that's stronger than that. So there's a strong pile of evidence there that there's at least something that's in our solar system causing a bit of mayhem. There's something else as well that I've had experience, that in the morning my eardrum, because I think my right eardrum got probably damaged, or the cochlea might have got damaged during a long flight I did to Australia. I think basically the pressure, normally the pressure goes in your ears, but the pressure in one of my ears didn't. So as it went down, it just hurt and hurt and hurt, and it felt like it was going to burst. So I think it probably has done some sort of minor harm in there. But the other ear, on my left side, basically, as I wake up each morning, I'm sort of hearing this like so it's not quite like one of these Buddhist chime sort of things, or chants, but what it is basically it's basically, from what I recall, is it sounds a lot like what a planet does. A planet makes these noises, and if you go and see some of these sort of NASA's sort of planet songs and stuff like that, or sounds generated by planets, you'll hear these different sort of noises like that. I'm just trying to figure out if there's a particular planet it sounds like. So later on I'll go look at some moons and different things like that. But we're wrapping up this basically the chemtrails are protecting the planet from overheating and other things that are going on with this sort of solar activity. Because what happens is the light increases and it hits the atmosphere and it changes frequency, which causes the upper atmosphere to heat up. This is why they use sort of radio frequencies and things like that with the HARP type technology. That basically it just superheats it. So yeah, so what you got is you've got the chemtrails that are blocking. That are basically the target. The aim of them is to block when Nibiru is at its strongest point, or has the strongest effect on the sun's atmosphere. So I would advise people to start making small preparations, like tools, if they've got sort of some food stored away. At least they can survive a month, or they can move somewhere where there is food. Some people's strategy is just to give up. They're going to embrace Jesus Christ or whatever. But I don't think sitting around praying is actually the answer. It's never been that way. It's basically God saves the people that save themselves. So you've really got to get off your backside and actually make an effort. Because I mean, it'd be terrible if someone's. I mean, I've got no issues with people who have a religion, but it would be terrible if someone had his whole family around him. He said, well, you know what we're going to do? We're actually going to ignore everything and we're just going to pray. And then he watches his children starve, or his wife gets sick, or a massive earthquake and half his family's crushed to death. So it won't be a quick rapture. It won't be like the lights get switched off and then you're dead. It'd probably actually be quite horrific, hearing people screaming and stuff, animals going crackers. So there's a lot more concerning stuff there, basically. Even I've got to make a lot of preparations. I do have a gas mask, some type of radiation suit type thing. I got this from Russian army surplus. Basically, it's been bagged up since there was a Chernobyl situation. They had a load of these stuff. Well, it wasn't used. Don't put, I haven't got a radioactive pursuit in my flat, but basically it was something that was bagged up, so it hasn't been touched for about good 20 something odd years, or maybe longer than that. I can't remember when it all kicked off, the Chernobyl thing, but yeah, basically, so that's one level. It's also sort of heat proof to it as well. So I need to look at things like fire. The other issue I've got is if say there's some type of tidal event that occurs where water levels raise, and there's potential to be drowned by some, basically the swelling of water. It may be that not a tidal wave goes this far inland, but for myself, but definitely, there could be a sort of water situation, a swelling or something. So I'm going to have to look at something like a small sort of oxygen mask that maybe a diver would use, not a diver, a fireman would use. So you've got these like fireman type masks. I just need something with a small oxygen tank to at least last a period of time, because it may be I have to actually be in some type of shelter and it may actually flood. And this may be the case for people that might use different shelters to hide in during a situation where, I don't know, like I say, the water comes in quickly, or they've got a situation where there's earthquakes and other big dust, or something like that, a dust storm. I had a theory about 9/11 as well. Is that with that collapse of the building, there was lots of stuff that went on, so it created a smoke screen for other things to go on. But it also, in reverse of that, that's just the two buildings coming down. It also prepares people. What happens if you've got loads of buildings come down because of a massive earthquake or a situation? I mean, terrorists are probably the least threatening thing, but what you'll get is a type of urban terrorism where people will group together out of fear, and if they're hungry and so on, they will seek to try to create little ghettos or secure areas. There'd be some people that just be like, say, hysterical, but the people that want to kick in a certain survival mode, basically, you'd have people that would link by the mentality. So you kind of got three different sort of groups. Maybe it might be more to it than that, but you've got your sheep, your shepherds, and then you've got these wolves. Now the wolves do whatever they need to survive. The shepherds want to organise groups. They want to organise the sheep to make a sort of a kind of, like I say, a productive group. So they're more liberal, but the wolves maybe not. So if you've got a situation where the place is full of people who just turned into a bunch of sheep, and then you've got an area where possibly, say, a family act like a pack of wolves, they're going to quickly take advantage of all them sheep. Because simply they just don't know how to survive. So these people will say, well, you're the tools to my survival, and use them. May get situations where the flip side is that, I mean, the only way you survive a major disaster is consider cannibalism, because at some point that is what you'll be left with, especially if the light's blocking out the sun, and the clouds and smoke and dust are blocking out the sun, and there's lots of storms going on. It's very difficult to get food. You haven't eaten for a week. If it comes to a point where you need to eat, you've got two choices. You either let yourself die or you don't. And that's, most people would turn into, there's like a survival mode. I mean, we've got things built into us that we don't even realise are there. But I think, basically a bit like if you're angry, how you lash out, but it's all automatically, it's the more social conscious mind that holds it back. But if it doesn't have a massive trauma or something, it doesn't have a reason to hold back. It will actually act first and then rationalise second. So more animalistic type behaviour. So that's something people need to be prepared for. The other thing I was thinking about is things like the dogs and animals. They might start to group together. If you've got a neighbourhood that's all broken, they've banded their pets. You may have a pack of dogs. Let's say this Nibiru stuff takes years and years. It wouldn't take long for these dogs to start turning a bit feral, and then you might have a little, like I say, a pack of inner city type dogs. And also the food source. If people start dying around them, if we don't eat them, they will. That's the other thing. And I think the other thing I've learned about, even though it's a grisly subject, cannibalism, is you really want to sort of eat the meat side of it, the muscle, and the bone's probably fine, but the other organs and stuff, no, there's not. not going to be. It causes diseases and other problems in human beings. So you probably feed them to the animals, or you find a way to recycle them into some other form. But you use everything. Use everything that you come across as a resource. If you're picky and choosy, then at first you might be at the top of the pack because people respect these kind of decisions. But when things start to run out, the same people that respect you will start to turn on you because you're holding them back from possibly moving on. You know, you might get people say, well, let's just stay here, let's feed off this ration of food in this store, the army's going to come and save us, and when they don't, and people start going hungry and their children start to die and other things like that, it'll turn pretty sour quick. So yeah, that's something to look at. Another thing I wanted to mention, a different subject, was I love the work that Simon Parkes, but I think he's a little bit off. He's off target at the moment with some of what he's coming out with. He basically said on it that he's always right. You know, he's basically said a viewer said that he's always right, even though he isn't. He mentioned, I think, he said that Hillary would have got in, and then he went all quiet over that. He didn't say, oh well, I made a mistake on that one. He just sort of pretended he knew it was going to be Trump all along. So there's probably a few other things where he's wrong, a bit like Nibiru, if he's just going to sort of cast it aside and say, oh yeah, it's some AI or something in space. You know, as his viewers go further down the line and a big situation happens, let's say somebody dies and they say, well, you said this thing didn't even exist. So I think it's, to the best of his knowledge, that's what he should be saying, or there should be a bit of a disclaimer in there. I'd encourage people to do their own research. You know, to the best of my knowledge, I know this. It's a bit like the stuff I come out with. It comes either from sort of inspired inspiration, sort of spiritual contact or meditation and stuff like that, and a lot of research. So I research, my mind searches for answers, and then these answers occur, and this information comes to my mind. And it's almost like a eureka, like, oh really, I felt like I always knew that sort of thing, you know, that kind of thing. So it's not really like an ego trip, but it's you know, you kind of learn from something, and then when you learn it, you want to share it, because this stuff doesn't get talked about anywhere else. So I think Simon Parkes is possibly off on a few issues. I sometimes sense a Vatican interest in him at some point, so I don't know. I don't even know, because he doesn't really know about his father. He's flip-sided on some of his type of alien type contacts, and he slag off sort of reptilian, and I don't know. See, the thing is, we can get into this thing where we kind of fantasize about lots of things, like, you know, there's Lyrans and so on, but how many people have reported seeing cat aliens? I mean, it could be just simply interdimensional things that are projecting something that you basically choose the form that they come in. They don't actually need one. There definitely is things like jinn and so on, or shadow beings, and sometimes you pick up a visual of what they might look like, but they don't actually show themselves. I've only on one occasion I've seen this 5-foot type shadow, dark, right next to me, and it was lurched over. I mean, it looks like it had possibly like claw-shaped hands on it, and maybe like a type of wolf type hind legs. So it could have been reptilian in that sense, but I couldn't cast it as one being. It's no different saying that we're a kind of this ape. You know, so they had to describe us. They say, "Oh, these upright apes." We might say, "Well, we're not actually apes." It's a bit more complicated than that. I mean, sure, we might have had a few genes chucked in here and there, but I don't actually think that was the original species. So there's just a hell of a lot of stuff going on at the moment. So that's sort of key as well. Sort of key point is basically don't overtrust what comes out in the media. It could misguide you. And I'd just like to say also that Simon Parkes comes out with some brilliant stuff. So it's definitely worth. You know, I'm not saying, I'm not sort of discrediting his sources. I'm just saying that I think as time goes on, you get more accurate information, and if you give out inaccurate information, then you get all sorts of issues that arise from that. He's more in tune with his political background, and that sometimes comes across with his communication as well. So yeah. Anyway, this is PT signing off, and thanks for listening to me.